Democrats of the President of Democrats of the Desert. And I want to welcome you to our September meeting. We had hoped to do this in person, but about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we convened and discussed the risks of doing so versus the advantages, and we decided to err on the side of caution and stay in our remote meetings until it's pretty clear that there's really no danger of in-person meetings. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality we are in. So thank you all for coming to this Zoom meeting. Our program is going to consist of, I'll just talk for a few minutes. So will my bird, as you hear. Then I'm going to turn it over to Ellie Kay to also talk for a few minutes about Region 19 and our Coachella Valley and environs. And then our special guest speaker, Christy Holstedge, is here. She's the current mayor of Palm Springs and a candidate for the state assembly. So it's going to be a great meeting. So let me start out by just saying a few words. What I said a few minutes ago, I think we should all congratulate ourselves for the victory in the recall. The Republicans have shown that because they cannot win an election by the numbers, they like to use this device of a recall to try to unseat duly elected Democrats. They do it for a couple of reasons. One is they can't win in a straight on election. And secondly, the way the recall mechanism is set up, they can elect a Republican with an extremely small percentage of the total vote. That's something that the legislature, in my opinion, and I think the Democratic Party's opinion, needs to adjust and fix. It needs to be adjusted and fixed. So, but I think that the result of the election was a definite statement. It wasn't close. And I hope it sent a message to the Republicans that they're really just wasting everybody's time and the state's money by trying this kind of tactic over and over again. So that's my speech about the recall. Ellie, I think I'm going to turn it over to her for her report here. And one of the questions I have, Ellie, is what have we learned this time, and why did we win this time and we lost with Gray Davis? So that's one question. So I'm going to mute myself and let Ellie talk.
I thank you, and I thank you, Stephen, for inviting me to be with you folks. As a longtime member of Democrats of the Desert, I appreciate the opportunity to let you folks know what is going on as Region 19 Director. I'm going to back up and I'll come to the answer to your question very shortly, Stephen, but I just wanted to bring you all up to date of what's been going on. Number one, we did have the California Democratic Party did have an e-board meeting in August. And at that meeting, I was able to introduce a resolution from a wonderful activist who actually is in the Assembly District 75, but it was unanimously accepted, and it will be taken to the general meeting in March. And what it was a resolution to do something about the recalls. I don't know if you're aware, but there are 6 additional recalls going on right now in the state of California, including the district attorney in Los Angeles. They've already failed in that one. They've already announced they're going to file another one. And what's so frustrating is that it's too easy for the Republicans to start these recalls. And so the resolution is going to be brought up at the convention in March. And then we will be taking that over to the California legislature to say, you've got to do something. They're not even following the law of the recall, which, by the way, came about in 1911. And it stated that it had to be 3 things. It had to be someone had to be convicted of a felony or accused of a felony or malfeasance. Well, none of that applied, obviously, to this governor, who, by the way, they started the recall on him the day after the election. in 2018 when he went. So this is how ridiculous this whole thing has become. So I'll keep you up to date on that, because again, that's going to be brought up for the General Assembly convention in March. We think if we're live again, that convention will be in Los Angeles. But we're not sure yet based on what's happening with COVID and the Delta variant. We're not sure yet that won't be another virtual meeting. There will be another eBoard meeting, however, and that will take place November 15th through the 21st. That will be virtual. They've already decided on that. There's going to be, however, for those interested in the platform, and what we're going to be saying, what the platform will look like in March at the convention, and then in June when we have the primary. That's going to be October 2nd. Now, they've already had one in Southern California that was held on the 18th of September. This one will be October 2nd. However, if you will submit something that you want to have said at that on that platform meeting for consideration, just put something in writing, get it to me. I'll get it to the California Democratic Party. Now, the other big question that's coming up is the redistricting. The Supreme Court has told, the California Supreme Court has told the commission, enough, you've got to get this thing moving along. We've got a convention. I mean, we've got an election in June. So come on, people, let's move it. So the targeted date now is December 27th. The maps should be available for viewing on that date. We don't know, this is not absolutely in stone yet, but that's the date that's being targeted. December 27th, we'll have the maps. Finally, well, actually 3 things real quick. I will be conducting a pre-endorsement caucus. And Stephen, if you haven't sent it to me already, I need from your membership chair, I need to know who the delegates are going to be. Remember, you get 1 for every 20 members of your club. I have your roster, but I need to know who those people are going to be. And that really should be an election. So it's according to the bylaws. Take a look at your bylaws. If you have any questions, give me a call or email me at the conclusion. Okay, the election.
We will attend to that.
Very good. Thank you.
Promptly.
Very good. I appreciate it, because then I need their name, I need the email address and their phone number so that I can be in contact with them and let them know when the pre-endorsement caucus will take place. Again, I'm targeting that for February, preferably in January, if indeed the districts are drawn and we know what the maps are. There's going to be some changes, my friends. We know that. We just don't know what they're going to look like yet. 2 last things. Riverside County was red in this election. 6,000 more people voted to recall the governor than what we were saying, which was no on the recall. So whether we want to admit to it or not, we've got a heck of a lot of work to do. I will be putting together a team after the election has been certified, probably for the first part of November. I'm going to put together a team to take a hard look at every single area in our Riverside County. What happened? Where do we have to do some work? And what I'm saying is this: if we know that Palm Springs all voted to say no on the recall, we don't have to, that's not going to be a priority as far as what we do next. But if we look and we see, for example, that Cathedral City said, no, we want to recall the governor, we need to take a look at the numbers. We need to find out, where are we weak as Democrats and where should we spend more time? It's easy for us to look at and thank God it was a landslide for the governor. Why did Riverside County go red? And we need to take a look at that. And I will be putting together a team as your regional director. I will be putting together a team once the election has been certified. And at that time, I'll be asking for some volunteers. I don't need a large group here, folks, but I think we need to have folks that like numbers and can analyze these numbers as to what happened and where it happened. Finally, the headquarters is still open. We are Monday Monday, Friday, Saturdays, we're open from 10 until 2. On Wednesday, we're open 10 to 4. The headquarters, and I want to thank everyone who did such an extraordinary job during this this election cycle. I mean, there was so many of you that wrote postcards, and you wrote postcards, and you made phone calls, and you texted. And so thank you all so much. For those who voted the correct way, which was no, thank you. You were part of that. And very quickly, in answer to your question, Stephen, the difference in this and the difference in our previous governor was very simple, really. We didn't have a Cruz Bustamante as a strong Democrat running against the governor. In this case, the California Democratic Party made very clear that the man we were supporting was Gavin Newsom. Unfortunately, with Gray Davis, those many years ago, that's not what happened. And so votes that went to Gray Davis were split with also votes that went to Cruz Bustamante. And so we ended up with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So fortunately, I think our party learned its lesson. And yes, there were some Democrats on that ballot, that second ballot, but we made it quite clear as party members that we had one candidate and one candidate only, and that was Gavin Newsom. And the result of the election proved that that was a correct decision on their behalf. So yeah, I'll take any questions real quick, because I know you've got quite a full agenda, and we've got the wonderful Christy to listen to other than this old broad. But Dennis, I see you have a question. May I take that question, Stephen?
Absolutely.
Okay, my question, Ellie, is when I was doing the phone banking, 2 or 3 or 4 times, I never once spoke with a Riverside County resident. It was Sacramento area. It was as
Yes.
north as Fort Bragg, and it was in the San Diego area. I would have knowing what you just said about 6,000 votes on the other side, I wish to heck I could have worked a little bit more in Riverside County. Can we change that?
Well, actually, Dennis, there were several groups that were making phone calls. You just happened to get a group that was going Northern California, but I can tell you for a fact, there were thousands of phone calls that were being made in Riverside County. There were also a lot of texting that was going on in Riverside County. There were different groups that were doing different things. The labor, for example, IBEW, UFCW, the laborers, the Teamsters, they were concentrating their efforts more in their areas. So you had a lot going on in Riverside. I know of thousands of calls that were made out. So what happened was it was split by what group you were in as to what your phone bank looked like. But we
Okay.
still have a lot of work to do. And we'll talk about that after we get take a look at the numbers. Once we see what the numbers look like.
I'm going to cut the questions to Ellie short.
Sure.
Because I don't want to take advantage of Christie's time, but Ellie,
Absolutely.
if you would put your email into the chat again.
I will be happy to.
Anybody that has a question for Ellie, I know that she answers all of them. So, thank you, Ellie. As I told you recently, you have a standing invitation to come to any of our meetings, and we very much appreciate your reports.
And I thank you so much for the time,
Yeah.
and thank you all. Putting all the information in right now. Thank you.
Without further hesitation, I'm going to make a very short introduction of our speaker. Christy is a city council person for the city of Palm Springs. She is the current mayor of the city of Palm Springs. And equally important, she is a candidate for the state assembly in our area. That's not why she's here today, but I think it's important that everybody know that because we need someone like her in that seat. So without further ado, I'm going to let Christy turn her loose, and I haven't told her what to talk about. And then more importantly, Christy would like to hear from our club and our members of any questions that they have for her. So Christy, take it away.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me, to you and all your members. It's a pleasure to be here. I think when we're in the same room, we always say it's incredible to be in a room with Democrats. I'll say it's good to be in a Zoom room with Democrats, not as good, but really just want to congratulate each and every one of you, and thank you for your hard work on this recall effort. I know so many of you personally are organizing, talking to neighbors and friends, doing the hard work to flip our district. You've been working for years and years, and thank you to LEK for her leadership. Really, I mean, this is a longer effort to turn Riverside County from red to blue. And so we are working and being successful in that effort. We've seen so many more Democrats get elected to city councils across the Coachella Valley. We've seen young people, working people, people of color, people from diverse backgrounds coming to serve on city councils. And I'm just so inspired by that effort, because those are the pipelines of leadership that we need, the bench of leadership we need of elected officials who represent our values as Democrats and are going to run for higher office or other office in the future. So I know, thank you to all of your work on that, especially as we see cities moving to districts, right? And following the California Voting Rights Act and moving to districts so that there is actual representation. Because I think one thing we know is that the people of Riverside County, they might have not voted the right way on this recall, but we are a blue county, we are blue areas. And so we need to make sure that people are counted in the census. We worked really hard on that. We need to make sure people are registered to vote and that they turn out to vote in these elections. Because I think what we've seen, especially I was just in Sacramento at the League of California Cities this week with all of the elected officials from the state, right? And those are overwhelmingly Republican elected officials at city council levels, right? And so I'm really proud of the work that we've done to elect Democrats in our region. So thank you. Long thank you, but I know there's a lot of work that's been done here. So I don't really want to talk at you very much. I'd love to have a discussion and answer any of your questions. I was just looking and seeing what issues you might be interested in and what I might flag for you. So one, I wanted to note, I just got off the call for the Planned Parenthood board meeting. I'm on the Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest, our regional board. We represent Riverside County, Imperial County, and San Diego County. And one thing that we're learning from this recall effort that I just heard is that the numbers track closely with vaccination numbers. It's actually almost identical, who is vaccinated and who voted no on the recall. So as the governor said, you know, science and public health were on the ballot, and we're really seeing that play out, especially in Riverside County. And as we know, we've had a lot of pocket areas that have just been oppositional to the vaccine, oppositional to mask mandates. Obviously, you know, our board of supervisors rescinded the mask mandate that the public health official did, you know, this past year in 2020, and they never rescinded it since. So I think that there are a few reasons that Riverside County residents voted the wrong way, voted yes, but also might feel left behind from the state, right? Might not be connected to feel like the state is best representing us. And sometimes I think we feel that too, as geographically isolated regions. We don't get our fair share of resources. Actually, the city of Riverside is one of the top largest, the 14 largest cities in the state of California. So they get tens and tens of millions of dollars more than the Coachella Valley, just because they're a big city for the state, especially for dollars for homelessness and affordable housing. Whereas we have more residents overall in the Coachella Valley, but we get a fraction of the state assistance or the state dollars to fund our issues around homelessness and affordable housing. So I do think that there are issues there that we can galvanize our region around, right? Fighting for our fair share of resources, making sure we're getting investments from the state fairly in our region. But we continue in Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley to lead the way on vaccination efforts, on mask efforts, on, enforcing public health. So I'm really proud. I asked the county to open the convention center for vaccinations and for testing site. And they were able to do that. We offered the convention center at no cost. So we volunteered to provide that over the last few months. And we've gotten over 42,000 shots in arms just in Palm Springs. So that's incredible. And then you might have seen, I just posted the most recent vaccination rates for Palm Springs, which is just really incredible. So we have 82.69% of our residents are fully vaccinated. Eligible residents, so 82.69%, and then 95.54%, almost 96% of our eligible residents are partially vaccinated. And that's a lot of hard work from everyone, reaching hard to reach people, doing PSAs, doing community advocacy, reaching out to, communities of color and doing clinics in those communities. So I'm really proud of all of our work there. And I think it shows, Palm Springs values, Coachella values. We believe in science. We believe in public health. We believe that our economy is dependent on public health, and we're not willing to risk our workers just to, make a buck and keep our economy going. So you've seen that we've also issued the requirement for vaccination, proof of vaccination or negative test to enter bars and restaurants. I hope you have that on your phone, or you can, bring a copy or something like that. But we're just getting a lot of positive feedback from residents who feel safe, workers who feel a lot safer, and really reduce surge. So we've really stopped this surge. The pandemic's not over, but we really are seeing, significant reductions in our case numbers. And you might not know, but we actually test the wastewater in our city. So we've been testing the wastewater to see how many viral copies are in people's waste. And we test those compared to tourists and compared to residents. So a little bit gross, but we have received a statewide award for that program. And we've been really tracking it very, very closely to understand how to balance tourism. So I just wanted to flag, I thought that you might be interested in COVID and our COVID response. And again, I think this is political, right? Our residents want us to enforce public health mandates. They want us to, follow the science. And the Coachella Valley as a whole wants that too. And our numbers are much, much better than the entire, the rest of Riverside County, where they're having a lot of anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers. I just wanted to flag for you the Riverside. I see your questions in the chat, by the way, so I'll go ahead and answer them. So please ask them there, or then I'll just open it up for however how much time Stephen will give us. I wanted to talk about the Riverside County Sheriff, Chad Bianco. You might have seen that I've gotten in a few public spats with him, criticizing him for his anti-mask, anti-vax positions. He's been public saying that he has a good immune system, that he's not going to get the vaccine. Actually, the rate of Riverside County Sheriff's deputies who have the vaccine is very low. They've seen huge outbreaks in their department. So his behavior and his public comments are directly putting Riverside residents at risk, and adding to the pandemic. And so that is a political issue that we need a sheriff who represents our values, who is not so hostile and so right-wing, frankly, a mini Trump in our region, because he's created significant issues. And the Riverside County Sheriff serves most of the cities in the Coachella Valley. So we're giving them tens and tens of millions, probably in the $100 million range, to provide public safety in the Coachella Valley. And, I don't know about you, I've interacted with deputies who, aren't wearing masks, who, don't make me feel safe in terms of public health. So I I applaud everyone's efforts to just criticize the sheriff publicly about the positions he's taking. It's making our job so much harder to protect people's public health. And he just said that it's not his job to essentially keep people safe. And we know that that's the number one job of the sheriff and of elected officials. So everyone agrees on that point. We have to find someone who can run, and we're having those conversations and looking who might be able to win, and, how to take on the Riverside County, the Sheriff's Association, their union, which does donate significant dollars to campaigns. So I'm going to look and see the questions in the chat. Yes, I wanted to flag Suzanne Peterson wrote, thank you, Suzanne. I was going to raise this too. So there's a women's march for reproductive rights on October 2nd. Everyone's seen that women's march across the country and across the world. Suzanne wrote that there's one in Idlewild scheduled for 10 a.m. at the center of town flagpole, Village Center Drive. There's also women's marches being supported and sponsored by Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest. So there is one in Beaumont, there is one in Idlewild, there is one in Riverside, and there is one in Temecula. So those are the regional the regional women's marches. Really disappointing to see that there isn't one in the Coachella Valley. We were talking about planning one, but we didn't want to take away from the official women's march movements and all of the work that's gone into those. So we wanted to support those as well. Megan said Wayman Furman would be a great to run against Chad Bianco. I agree. I've asked him to do that. And I'll just want to say a little bit about Planned Parenthood and about the Women's March for reproductive rights and abortion rights. We really are facing the overturn of Roe. I think that we might see that. And with SB 8 in Texas, obviously abortion is basically completely outlawed in the state of Texas. And we have a number of states, practically on the ground where people cannot access abortion care. And then we have a number of anti-abortion states who are going to follow in Texas's lead. So we're expecting that Arizona has announced that they are planning on passing a similar law. So thinking through that there will be a lot of abortion refugees, patients who need care, who might be coming to California to get that care. We've already seen patients from Texas coming into California to get abortions, and we'll see a lot more. And obviously that's just the people who are able to travel, knowing that a huge portion of people who need reproductive health care probably cannot travel outside of Texas or Arizona or all of these states that are going to fall. So we do need to start depressing topic, but we really are. And Planned Parenthood, I've been on the board since 2016, before Trump was elected. And frankly, that's why I ran for office the first time, is because we just need women at all these levels. We need people who represent our values making these decisions, and we won't have equality until we have those seats. But we've been planning for how to take care of all of these patients who aren't going to access, basic health care for them and their families. And I think our Coachella Valley being so close to Arizona, we're going to see a lot of those people coming into our area. So please do attend the Women's March. Please do speak out. Please do everything you can to speak out about what will happen if Roe falls, because I think that we might see that happen, unfortunately, with the change of the Supreme Court. I'll talk just a little bit about Assembly District 42, if I can share with you some of the information about the assembly race. So AD 42, as it is now, our assembly district for much of the Coachella Valley, except for the people who are in Eddie Garcia's district, or 8056, AD 42 is a Democratic district. It's +2 to Democrats. And Biden won the district by 3 points. So it actually is a blue district, and with redistricting and all the work that's going in redistricting and drawing the lines and keeping communities together, our area is only going to get bluer. We know it's getting bluer. We know you're doing all the advocacy and organizing to make it bluer. And we know that our people are Democrats, right? And those are our values of our communities. So it actually is an extremely winnable race because it's already +3 Democrat. And we're going to probably get more points in redistricting. So just to flag that, I know sometimes people say it's a really hard district to win, and we get kind of disillusioned because we've tried so many times. It's hard to keep up the fight in flipping these seats. But this is a flippable district, and we're going to flip it. Chad Mays is undecided about running, so he does not know if he's going to run. He has publicly said that. And so he says he wants to wait until the lines are drawn. I think that's because he knows it's a Democratic district, and he is not a Democrat. He's an independent. He's rated 85% by the GOP. So he's rated, poorly by some of the organizations that we care about, Sierra Club, Planned Parenthood, ACLU, all of the kind of progressive Democratic organizations, right? And so he's rated 0% by Planned Parenthood. So I think he knows that he's vulnerable and that it's a Democratic district, and it might not be possible for him to win. He actually kind of snuck in there last time. He only won by 3.5 points. Against Denny, the Democrat. And that's, the registration of the district. So if we, support one Democrat who can win, who can bring together a strong coalition to win, who can do all of the work to reach out to voters and raise the money it costs to reach out to voters, we can flip it. And it's the best opportunity to flip it now, which is why I'm running, because otherwise I would be enjoying my 11-month-old. I'm not here to do anything but flip this district for us. And, Chad's being attacked on both sides. So you'll see that last time they actually sent a mailer out comparing him to Bernie, him and Bernie on a mailer. And then there's another mailer with him and Trump. So, not having a party, not having the infrastructure of a party like we have with Assembly Democrats being able to come in and flip the seat really leaves him vulnerable. So people are asking questions. I want to answer them and make sure that we stay on topic.
Well, let me interrupt here. One of the questions that I know a lot of people want to hear about, Patrick has repeated it again in the chat, is the care for the homeless and what happened to the well. And does the city have plans to construct or replace the 24-hour service that the well was providing?
Sure. So happy to talk about it. So we are extremely committed to alleviating, or hopefully one day eliminating, homelessness in the city of Palm Springs. And so we've been working, that we got funding. So we got $10 million to address homelessness. Actually, it's for permanent supportive housing, primarily is the state's requirements for that funding. So we've already allocated $6 million of that 10. We've already allocated $6 million to permanent supportive housing. So we've gotten hundreds of more units that are coming forward that are for formerly homeless people and their families. So hundreds of units that would not have been built, but for these dollars that we've allocated to those programs. That's from $4 million of the 10 million and then 2 million from our housing fund. So we're really committed, because what we learn time and time again, and I've been I'm currently chair of our regional homelessness committee, and I've worked on these issues before being on council and now for 4 years. The problem is that we have shelters, not in Palm Springs, but in the Coachella Valley, we have shelters, we have transitional housing, but there's not enough permanent homes for people to leave homelessness. And so what happens is people go into the shelter, they might go into transitional housing, there's no homes for them. And then they might go back on the streets, and it's a cycle. And so I know it's hard not seeing us invest in building a shelter right away or something like that. But all of the experts that we've worked with, and homeless people themselves too, who we've talked to, right? We need places for people to go. Homes are the solution to homelessness. So we're investing in homes on the back end. On the front end, we did allocate $3 million to the county's project for the Ivy Palm. They were going to do a motel conversion. Unfortunately, that fell through on the county's end. They couldn't get the bankruptcy court to sell it to them. So we have that money now. We're holding on it, and we're working on a plan. We have a site or a few sites identified. We're working forward and bringing that public. So it's not public yet, but we do have sites that we're working on that already have existing buildings that would be able to be, an emergency shelter, and then put up pallet homes or mobiles, where people can live and have a community and have transitional homes. So one thing that's frustrating, and look, I've been an activist, it's hard, government is not as fast as we want it to be, and keep pushing us, because we are trying every single day on this issue. And as you just see, homelessness is increasing throughout the state. I mean, it's shocking to see it in Sacramento and LA and everywhere you go, right? So Palm Springs is not immune. For the well in the desert, I think there's a few things that happen there. But one, the well in the desert failed to attend the hearing where we are supposed to consider evidence about their conditional use permit. So they did not attend that, and legally we can only consider the evidence that we hear in that hearing. But I'll say, I think the well in the desert, though providing really important humanitarian crisis services, was not providing the services on site to get people into housing. So they weren't providing housing assistance. They actually weren't letting our housing workers go on site to help those clients. And so what exists now in the city of Palm Springs is we actually have, so the well was never 24-hour. Now we do have a 24/7 shelter at the United Methodist Church. They've already helped 160 people who were homeless go to the shelter, and most of those, a large majority, are going into housing. So that's really incredible. The county runs that. They're extending it into October, and we as a city are going to fight to make sure that they maintain a shelter in the city of Palm Springs, so people do have a place to sleep and do have a place for people to go. And then there's also the boxing club. So the city has provided the boxing club, a city facility. We're the only city like this in the Coachella Valley that we're providing our facility for free to Martha's Village and Kitchen. We've given them $250,000 to operate full services. So it's a drop-in center like the well, but it's also providing housing referrals. It's getting people directly into the housing that Martha's has. They have they have dozens and dozens of units, and they also operate a shelter. So it's just a better system to get people off the streets and into services. And I know that was a really hard decision, but we need to look at what's helping people get into housing and not, harming people by just keeping them on the streets.
All right, I'm going to just jump in with a personal comment. I want to follow up on the discussion about the Sheriff Bianco. I know this group, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but his refusal to enforce the mask requirement is not just a casual decision. Law enforcement officials don't get to pick which of the laws that they enforce and don't enforce. In fact, his refusal to do that is actually a violation of his oath of office. And folks, if he does that with that law, the next law that he refuses to enforce may be a law designed to protect you, somebody who's disabled or somebody, a person of color. It's a slippery slope when you give permission to a law enforcement person to decide which law they want to enforce. So that's my little speech. If anybody has a question for Christy, unmute yourself and raise your hand, and I'll call on you. So there's no reason to type it when everybody here, I think, can speak, unless you want to type. Does anybody else have a question? Do I see anybody? I can't see everybody.
I saw Nurse Judy ask, can we sue, I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
sheriff for increasing the cost of healthcare costs for the department. I've asked similar questions to our city attorney. City of Palm Springs doesn't hire the sheriff to provide public safety, but I have talked to cities like Coachella and others that do. Is that a breach of contract if they're not, he's not enforcing the law in their city as they want? So I think those cities have a better ability to pressure the sheriff's department and pressure the board of supervisors, right, about how they're funding. Because let's be real, the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, the county has a $6.9 billion budget. And they get our taxpayer dollars to address homelessness and housing and mental health and social services. And so they haven't done enough. And so we cities have had to step up, and it's our job too, but we don't get, we don't have a $6.9 billion budget to address social services and mental health and homelessness. We have a $200 million budget, and half of that goes to public safety. So you can imagine how much of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors budget and the sheriff, the county budget, our taxpayer dollars, go to public safety and go to the sheriff. And he's fought oversight. Our supervisor, Manny Perez, tried to provide some oversight, and he fought that and said, I don't work for you. So I am supportive of any legal actions that any of our communities want to take.
Well, I think the law, the way I understand the law, is you cannot sue a public official or law enforcement for what is known as a discretionary act of judgment, even though very often they should be. But in this case, this is not a discretionary act. I'm just going to fall back to my last comment. This is not a breach of contract. This is a breach of his oath, a breach of a constitutional duty that he has. And it would seem to me that the cities who engage the services of the sheriff do have standing, what's called standing, to bring that kind of action, if you can persuade their city councils to do that. So, all right, that's one question. I have another question. This has to do with if you would get elected to the assembly. One of the big hot issues right now, both in the courts and politically, is whether or not cities can be compelled to go to district elections as opposed to at-large elections. There's a number of cities in the Coachella Valley which have vigorously resisted district elections to keep their incumbents deeply entrenched. I'm very familiar with the Rancho Mirage situation personally. So if you get elected, would you be willing to promote a state law requiring cities of a certain size and criteria to have district elections, which is more democratic and representative?
Yes, absolutely. So strongly support district elections, strongly support, what's been happening under the California Voting Rights Act. But I do think that it leaves, that option or the discretion to the city councils who have their own incentives to keep things as the status quo, to keep things as they are. So yes, I've been really supportive of everyone's work in Palm Desert to get the first, Karina Quintanilla is the first Latina elected to that city council. Unfortunately, they only got one. I think that was a mistake that city council made, not to go to districts, because the California Voting Rights Act, the way we read it, is very clear. You're required to go to districts if there's racially polarized voting. Palm Springs led the way, and we published that we had racially polarized voting. So we just came out and put it online and said, for anyone who thinks that this isn't an issue, it's an issue in Palm Springs. Here's the data. We're required to go to districts. And so really we've seen a huge change in the representation. And frankly, there are, more Democrats in a lot of these cities, but the city councils don't reflect that. And that's because there are at-large positions that are too difficult, or that have racially polarized voting. So yes.
Just for the information of our members, this particular issue may get resolved favorably in the near future, because there is a court case right now in the California Supreme Court. The name of that case is Pico Neighborhood Association against the City of Santa Monica. And that, in that case, we should hear in the next month or two, the Supreme Court's going to decide whether whether cities of a certain size can be compelled by law under the California Voting Rights Act to go to districts. So if that happens, the landscape on this issue is really going to change. Okay, anyone else have any questions they would like to ask Christy? She's a great person and she's here, so don't.
Question. I have a question.
Let's take advantage of the opportunity.
Francis?
Ellie has her hand up too.
And so does Patrick. Patrick has his hand up and so do I.
All right, well, let's do Ellie, Patrick, and Dory. Is that all right?
And I think Frances had her hand up as well.
Okay,
Not me, Francis.
okay, Ellie, Patrick, and Francis then.
Patrick, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is on my favorite topic again, Christy, and you know what that is.
Yes.
On the homeless situation, I put it in the chat. But I think the issue is concerning for a lot of people is that when one city decides to help the homeless out or the situation in that area and other cities nearby are not doing anything, are pulling their fair share of helping out the people who become homeless in their cities, the homeless migrate to Palm Springs because there's no services elsewhere. And I was just wondering, like for instance, when they go to the 24-hour housing at the Methodist Church, is there a questionnaire asking where they became homeless and why they became homeless, and to see a history of whether they became homeless here in Palm Springs or elsewhere and came here for the services?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Thank you for always advocating for our homeless neighbors and residents. Really appreciate your leadership. So yes, that's one thing that's really important to note. And, I wrote in the chat that the benefit of using Martha's, which is the big service provider, is that they're collecting the data and they're connected to the HMIS system, the housing management and information system with the county that gets people on a list for housing. And so one question on that questionnaire is, what was your last city that you lived in, or your last known address? So that varies for homeless people, right? People kind of go back and forth between different communities. But we do look at the zip code or the city that people came from. That is an issue. I think Indio has had that issue for a long time because they're the only cities that provide emergency shelters. And then they have encampments around those shelters, right? They see a huge influx because look, people from Palm Springs go to Indio for services. And so that's why we've been really committed for the West Valley to provide services here too. So it's not just a burden on the East Valley. But that isn't to say that, yeah, we want all the cities to provide services in their own communities. One thing that's been happening is the Coachella Valley has 63% of the shelter beds for the whole county. So we've really seen that people from Riverside, Banning, Beaumont, throughout the county, even further, are coming to Indio, coming to the Coachella Valley because there aren't shelters there. So one thing that we've really been working on as a region is getting those cities to also provide services, right? Because if you're homeless, you can't go all the way to Indio. You can't go, very far. You don't have transportation. It's a huge issue. So we are trying, that's also a thing. Like, do we want to put all the services in cities that already have services? Should we put them in other places so that, it's equally distributed and people can access it in their own communities? So that's some of the work that we've been doing too, to make sure those other cities are doing it. But we have more work to do. Like the city of Palm Springs was one of the only cities that offered to open a 24-hour cooling overnight shelter in our city. I think the other cities like Cathedral City and Desert Hot Springs did not. And some of that was that their councils might not have wanted sometimes have those services because they do see the impact. So, for the city of Palm Springs, we know our residents want us to provide services. We know that there might be an increased impact, but we also want to take care of people and not treat them like, they're animals or something, right? They're humans. They deserve these services. We have to do it in an equitable way. So that's a hard line that we've been trying to manage.
Francis, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I want to talk about homeless as well and the well in the desert. Since I live here 20 years, they provided dinners at the convention center and everything for the people. I live in Rancho Mirage and I shop towards Palm Desert and of course Palm Springs. And I'm seeing more and more people that are on the street. And I don't know whether that has to do because the well closed or not. But the well also employed a lot of people that received services from the well. So what happened to those people now? I'm concerned about them. And I believe there were families that did get housing from the well. And what happened to them?
Sure. So the well provides great services. They provide daily meals. They're still doing that. They employ people or they have volunteers who do that work. And so
Where?
throughout churches throughout Palm Springs, they've been posting almost every day that they're providing those daily meal services. So that's an important service that they're still doing. The question was for us, is the boxing club a good location for the well in the desert right downtown? Is that working? And should they have a permit to operate there? The city council decided no. One problem that happened was that there was just a lot of concentration of people, frankly, like doing drugs, using drug paraphernalia, living in the park there and not wanting services, not getting into services because unfortunately they're struggling with their addiction, which is a disease, right? And so the city council,
Right.
and I'll stand by this decision, thought that I think it's more important to have services like Martha's that track the number of people they serve, who can tell us what percentage of their clients are getting into housing, who can provide that housing. And the well is, a great like little engine that could, and they do really important work. They're just not at that level to even apply for a lot of federal grants. They didn't apply for aid from the state during the pandemic. So
But
they're
they,
just
they
not
were
a lot
helping
of-
local people.
Hmm?
Does the boxing club have showers?
Yep. Yeah, the boxing club has everything and more that the other well in the desert site did. LEK.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm your last question. Where can we write a check?
Thank you. I'll put the information if I can in the chat. So thank you. Yes, I am asking for early support. So the way that we're going to win this seat is we're going to have one strong Democrat who can flip it and all unite. And so I actually just got the endorsement of the Lieutenant Governor. So I'm really, really proud. And how amazing is that? And she just, supports women along with Congressman Ruiz, Congressman Takano, Supervisor Perez, down the list, Democratic endorsements, as well as the LGBT caucus. One thing you might not know, I'm openly bi, right? And I would be the first openly bi legislator in the California legislature. That's never happened. All these firsts that we never think, that we never want, right? We should have had a female mayor in Palm Springs 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and so all these firsts that we still need. So I've been endorsed by the LGBT caucus. It's their priority district. They want someone who's LGBT representing Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley. And I'm looking for the women's caucus, Planned Parenthood, all those groups. So would love your support as you're able to get it. I know I'm going to go through the DOD endorsement process, but I promise you this seat is flippable and we're going to do it. So I'm going to put my info for the Act Blue in the chat if I can.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Well, on behalf of the DOD, we look forward to your participation in our endorsement process, and we'll get that going pretty quick. If anybody doesn't have any more questions, I think Christy's time is valuable, and I'd like to let her return to her parenting and city counciling and mayoring. Christy, thank you. I thank you personally. The members, thank you. It's been a great meeting and very informative, and you're welcome here anytime. So,
Thank you. I'm happy to be here anytime. Thank you for having me. And I'll just say, campaigns, all of this work, it's based on all of us, right? It's not about one candidate. It's about movements that we're building together and change that we're seeing in our valley, the people we represent, moving to districts, getting people registered, all the advocacy you do is just so important every day. I'm just so grateful to work in partnership with all of you. Thank you for your leadership in our communities.
oh, thank you very much. And we're coming up to the 3 o'clock hour here, but we have a few minutes. If anybody would like to report or ask any questions or initiate a short discussion, I'm great advocate of open discussion of things. Does anybody have anything they want to say or conclude with? I'm looking here. I'll see.
Stephen, it's Dory.
Yes,
Hi.
I recognize the voice.
Thank you. I think just so those on the call who are concerned about Sheriff Bianco know that DOD is working with others under the leadership of Michael Finland to try to find someone to run against him, a progressive to run against him. So I'm not sure everyone on the call is aware of that effort. Michael's on the call. Michael, did you?
Yeah, it's been kind of under the radar, and I guess we are now starting to think about coming out from under the radar a
Yes.
little bit
Well,
now that the recall is behind us. So I'm glad to give Michael a few minutes to talk about what the committee has been doing.
And can I just add, I don't know if Michael's still there, but can I just add that I used to not pay attention to sheriff's races. And a few years ago, Bianco's predecessor, after Sandy Hook, said he would not enforce an assault weapons ban or stricter gun sale law. So here he was about when mass murders were happening and continue to happen. So I became more aware of the sheriff and how important that is. And so I'm encouraging people to talk to your friends and neighbors about this. It's very, very important. Each city pays the sheriff's department, the cities that use them, almost $300 an hour for a sheriff. $300 an hour for a sheriff. So I don't know if Michael's still there. I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Michael's still there unless he's got a robot that nods, because I see him sitting there. Michael, unmute yourself and maybe share with us what's going on with the committee that you're heading.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't want to cut anyone off. Just to let everyone know, the earlier part of this calendar year, the DOD put together a subcommittee to look into reaching out and finding potential candidates to run for the sheriff's position for the next election cycle. We started the early part of 2021. We have a diverse mix of minds who are part of this committee. They bring a lot to the table, a lot of insights, and it's been my pleasure to work with them. We just have been meeting since the early part of 2021. We took a little bit of a break over the summer months because we wanted to redirect our energies toward the recall process. And we've had a resumption now this month for that committee. And we're looking to find ideal candidate or ideal candidates to come forward. We've been doing our research on potential names, potential individuals who may be good contenders for that position. And we will be having a panel discussion on this matter, probably into the latter part of October. It's going to be October 23rd for our next general membership meeting. And we will have, again, a diverse, eclectic group of speakers who'll be a part of that panel. And they'll be looking at this whole process from different vantage points to see what is entailed. We'll put forth a prototype of ideal attributes that we're looking for in a sheriff to take over that position. We'll be discussing different measures and just touch upon some strategy ideas of where we'd like to go with that process. So I hope that those who are here today will be able to join us next month for that panel discussion. And as I said, we'll be looking at this from different vantage points. We want to, of course, touch upon different areas where we feel there's been deficits with the current sheriff. We want to look for the ideal prototype of what someone would bring to the table, job experience wise, educational experience wise. And there's a lot of interactions with different types of groups that that person would have to be able to reach out to and appeal to them to garner full-fledged support in going forward with the process. So we're very excited about this, and we've had regular meetings. We set a foundation for it. When we began early this year, we put together a strategic plan of where we're looking to go. Of course, with a strategic plan, you can have a timetable. And we've kind of kept things under wraps to get our bearings and get our foundation established, which we've done. And now in going forward from this point, going into October, next big project is going to be the panel discussion, but please do, if you have a chance, to join us next month, and through emails, we'll keep you informed as to what's happening and what's going on. But we all came together. We had a show of solidarity with regards to the situation that Governor Newsom was facing. And although we covered it this afternoon, worries and concerns as far as Riverside County, we got the numbers, we got what we needed statewide. And as we look forward to next election cycle for sheriff, we just need to bring everyone together again and work very assiduously on tackling that project. So I will turn the floor back to the president, but that's where we're at. It's a good group, and please, I would love for folks to, if they express interest, to become a part of the process of what we're looking to accomplish in that endeavor.
Thank you, Michael. I would just underscore what Michael said. That panel is going to be really good. I can tell you who we tentatively have on it. We have, obviously, Michael is going to be a member. The chair of our county Democratic Party, Tisa Rodriguez, has agreed to be on that. Ellie Kay, Region 19 Director. Are you still here, Ellie? I can't
I'm
see.
still here.
Yes, she will be on it. And Joy Silver, another very active Democratic leader, will be on it, and it will be moderated, and it's going to be a hell of a talk. I urge everybody, if you're thinking about coming to a meeting, that's one to come to. And I also want to close, we're 5 minutes over, but on the same subject of replacing Bianco, this is a network question. I'm going to ask everybody that can hear me right now to sit down when we're done, go through your Rolodex, go through your phone contacts, and think of anybody who has ever had law enforcement experience who might be a possible candidate. And it's not just city policemen, sheriffs, or people in uniform, law enforcement. The definition of law enforcement is much broader for the purpose of a sheriff's candidate than somebody just uniformed officer. It can be, as I pointed out when we last met in this committee, it can be somebody in a federal agency. If you've ever worked for the FBI, the DEA, the California Department of Corrections, the Federal Department of Corrections. It's a very broad list of organizations that would qualify a person to become the sheriff. And with credentials like the FBI, it seems to me a Democratic person with FBI credentials, it's hypothetical at this point, would make a very powerful opponent to a guy like Chad Bianco. So I'm going to ask everybody to search your own contacts. And if you can think of anybody that might even be remotely a potential candidate, contact Michael or me and tell us who it is, and we'll take it from there. Okay, unless anybody has any closing things to say, I'm going to close the meeting. This was great. Christy is great. I hope you'll all consider supporting her. And we will take up her candidacy in the regular course with our candidacy how we vet them and endorsement process. And we will see you on the 4th Saturday of next month. Thank you very much. Call me anytime. Bye-bye.
Bye.